Hi everyone, this is River Navarro from Bakersfield Behavioral Healthcare Hospital. I'm the Director of Clinical Services here at the hospital. I'd like to wish everyone a happy Wellness Wednesday. I would also like to say hello to all of our Facebook family and friends. I want to talk about something a little different today. I'm going to refer back to our themes of the day here at the hospital. So let me kind of update you and kind of give you a recap on what that is. So here at the hospital, we have 14 different themes. They are clinical themes that our therapists discuss with all of our patients in treatment. It's on a 14-day cycle, and then it starts over. So I've given examples in the past, but I'll kind of refresh your memory here. So some of our themes, some of my favorites are seeking safety, mindfulness, managing grief and loss, which I talked about last week on Wednesday. And one of my other favorite themes is reducing shame and stigma. So this is a topic that is, I know I always say it's near and dear to my heart, but this one really is. This one I think tugs at my heartstrings the most because so many of our patients that are here for mental health treatment often deal with issues of discrimination, oppression, mistreatment. There's a lot of misunderstandings, I think, about people who have mental health disorders, and so I want to squash some of those myths today. Plus, in my experience, my clinical experience, talking with patients about this in the last 12 years that I've worked in this industry, I've heard a lot of these stories, and these themes have come up in treatment. So many patients over the years have disclosed that their family members aren't understanding, society isn't understanding. There's a lot of silence around discussing mental health issues. I think in a lot of ways it's considered taboo, or it's kind of something that it's sensitive, don't go there, let's not talk about it, so on and so forth. So as a professional, I want to say that is not the best approach, and that when something is destigmatized and people get the treatment that they deserve, I notice that they are empowered to make better choices. So I really want to drive that home. That's probably the main message of the video today. So I want to give you some information, and I want to talk about just how common mental illness really is. Because I think a lot of people think, oh, it's not that common, or, maybe some people think they don't know anyone that's struggling with a mental illness. I can tell you that's not true. You know somebody. If you're watching this video, hi, I'm River, you know me. Your neighborhood-friendly therapist at BBHH, Director of Clinical Services. I have sought mental health treatment in the past and throughout the years, and I'm thriving. So I want to kind of really draw attention to this issue just because, not just because it's personal, but because it's something that I've talked with so many patients about over the years, and I've dedicated my life to helping other people. So it's really, really important to me to get the message out there. So I want to start out by talking about some myths. Myth 1, mental health problems are rare. So that's kind of what I was tapping into earlier. I think that's a common belief amongst a lot of people, and I want to say that's not true. Depending on the country and depending on where you live in the world, as many as 1 in 4 or 5 people will struggle with a mental health disorder in their lifetime. So think about that number. It's probably higher than most of you think. So I want it known that it's extremely common. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. It's nothing to feel ashamed about because it's so common, right? It can't be that bad if it's common. So that's the way I look at that. Another myth. People with mental illness are unable to work. That's actually not really true either. So majority of the people that struggle with a mental health disorder do work, and they are reporting to work, and they're probably your coworkers if you're a working person at the moment. So I want you to think about that as well. I work in a hospital with over 200 employees, or something around that, I'm sure. So, if 1 in 4 or 5 people are struggling with a mental health disorder separate from our patients, that's a pretty high number, right? That's probably someone that works in my department alongside me, right? So these are things that we want to be cognizant of because it helps break down some of the stigma, some of the misinformation that I think we've been taught. So let's talk about another myth. People with mental health problems do not experience discrimination. I'm going to say that is false. In my experiences working with people over the years, this issue would come up quite frequently. I think employers are more understanding when it comes to medical issues or other issues that people may be having that might be impacting them in the workplace. Not so much when it comes to mental health disorders. So that's something else that we definitely need to start talking about. And, why are we perceiving a medical issue as more important than a mental health issue when there's such an intricate connection between our mind and body? So just marinate on that one. Another myth. It is easy for people to talk to friends about their feelings. I'm going to say that's false as well. And part of the reason why is because to be honest, I think there's just a lot of judgment. There's a lot of judgy people out there. So what I mean by that is, when people speak openly and truthfully about what they're genuinely experiencing emotionally, it makes people uncomfortable, right? And it's like, oh, don't go there. I don't want to deal with that. Or that's too raw, or that's too real for me. So a lot of people who are struggling just kind of learn to shut down. They learn to not say anything because they see how other people are responding to them and that they realize they're making people uncomfortable. And it's like, okay, well, maybe I won't talk about that. And then they never seek the help that they really need when they have nothing to feel ashamed about in the first place. So moving on. So I wanted to kind of start out by giving you some information, but I want to talk a little bit as well about some cultural factors here. So like I mentioned earlier, depending on where you live in the world, where you're from, whatever groups or identities, you fall into, there's always going to be other factors that impact your mental health. So I can only really speak from my own experience at this point, as I want to be sensitive. I can kind of talk about my cultural experiences as a person of Latin American descent. I can speak kind of culturally about some of the messages or information I've received about people with mental health disorders, since I was a child. I'm sure some of you may be able to relate. Maybe you've heard similar things. Like I said, I don't want to speak on anyone else's culture or anything like that. I can only speak on my own at this point. But I can definitely say that people with mental health disorders are, perceived as crazy. I don't like that word, but, those are things I've heard. Or those people, right? So there's a lot of othering going on or separation that happens, kind of those people over there with those mental health problems. Kind of like we don't want to deal with them, right? Because they're different and they make us uncomfortable. There's also a lot of lack of education as well about mental health and how the mind and body are connected. And, some groups maybe they haven't had the exposure or the education, or they don't have the awareness to be able to recognize mental health issues as mental health issues. They often attribute symptoms to medical issues or even a drug or alcohol issue or, something else. They may not recognize it as something pertaining to someone's mental health, or, even a history of trauma or, some other reason that where a person's mental health may be impacted. So I just want you to kind of go along with me on this for a little bit and maybe think about, the groups that you fall into, or what cultural messages have you received about mental health treatment, disorders, and maybe how it was stigmatized or shamed in some way culturally. So just kind of something for you to think about in your own time. And I mentioned earlier that regardless of, what culture you come from or where you live in the world or who you are, where you're from, all that jazz, whenever you are able to express yourself openly and talk about your emotions, talk about your mental health, how you're coping, how you're feeling, so on and so forth, at that point you are empowered and you do make better decisions. I've seen this time and time again with numerous patients that I've worked with over the years, and just being able to have the validation and the affirmation of who they are and what they're experiencing can be really powerful. And I think from there, when people get the treatment that they need, then shame and stigma goes away, or it's reduced in some way, shape, or form, and they can actually move forward with their lives. And so I think that that's kind of the flip side, or the positive side to all of this. So at this point, one last thing, because I know I've been on my soapbox for a while, because I'm just really passionate about this, but I really want to encourage all of you to open your minds and to think about some of the things I've mentioned today, specifically cultural messages that you've received regarding mental health treatment. And I want you to also think about ways that maybe you could help reduce shame and stigma for yourself or someone else. Because I think that the more people start to speak openly about these things, more people seek treatment, more people recover, and more people get better. So I think in that sense, you can use your voice and your power for the greater good, and I think that that's really important. So especially during the pandemic with COVID-19, with so many people struggling right now with mental health disorders, with substance use issues, eating disorders. I mean, I could go on and on and on, depression, anxiety, all that stuff. I think it's so important to maintain a sense of community and educating yourself about mental health issues and treatment, and speaking out, or even correcting people when they're spreading these myths and this misinformation. You can really do a lot of good, and there's a lot of power in that. So I want to encourage all of you to make a pledge, make a vow, whatever you want to call it. I just want to encourage you to think about that and to consider some type of action in a way that seems appropriate for you. There's also a couple of websites that I think might be useful to you, so I didn't want to forget about that. I encourage you to look at the NAMI website. That's spelled N-A-M-I, NAMI. Mental Health America. I thought that one was very user-friendly, easy to use, easy to understand, as well as the World Health Organization website. They do talk about mental health and issues kind of around the world. So I think some of that might be interesting too. So I hope you found this video useful today, and I look forward to bringing you more information next week. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.